The A7V, or Sturmpanzerwagen A7V, was the first German tank that saw action in the later stages of the First World War. The rather unusual name of the tank was directly derived from a transport department in the War Ministry, notably the Department No. 7. The A7V was the first German tank, and it was also the first fully tracked-built vehicle in Germany itself. In total, only 23 were built. 2 of them were prototypes, one with a wooden superstructure and one with armor plates, one radio variant, and 2 production runs with 10 tanks each. Now these low numbers are important to consider if someone makes any assessment about it, because the tank gained a very bad reputation that doesn't seem to be justified, but more on that later. Tanks in World War I were quite primitive and completely new technology. They were limited in technical and tactical aspects. Due to this, they were basically moving pillboxes and used first and foremost as infantry support weapons, unlike most tanks in World War II. The development of the A7V involved 13 companies and the production 20, due to the complexity of a tank compared to other weapon systems. The rather fast development of 11 months could only be achieved due to the fact that a large amount of components were already available in various industries. The weapons were standard equipment, the armor plates were similar to those used on warships, yet the available engines weren't sufficient in terms of horsepower, thus a twin engine plant of production ready engines was used. Although the tank was developed quite fast, the overall process of development and production was not straightforward at all. After the initial appearance of Allied tanks on the battlefield in 1916, the German High Command was convinced of the tank as an important weapon. Yet this view changed after the following limited success of the Allied tanks. This restricted the development and production of German tanks and the allocation of resources, especially since the highest priority was given to submarine warfare. Yet, after the success of the British tanks in the Battle of Cambrai in 1917, the German High Command pushed again for the introduction of German tanks. But instead of pouring all resources into the A7V project, many new projects were started that didn't reach a sufficient production readiness before the end of the war. The change in requirements, resource shortages, changing priorities, shifting interests, and the usual bureaucracy delayed ultimately the production of the A7V in significant numbers. Although it should be noted that even a larger number of these tanks wouldn't have made a difference in the outcome of the war due to the lack of fuel and other crucial resources. Now let's take a look at some technical specifications. In this case I had a great and detailed source co-written by German historians and engineers, which you can clearly see because they provided the values in millimeters, because everyone knows meters or even centimeters aren't precise enough when you are German and dealing with the measurements of a 30-ton tank. The length was 7.35 meters with a width of roughly 3 meters and a height of 3 meters 35. Finally, the track width was 2.115 meters. The tank could traverse trenches up to 2 meters in width, cross water at a depth of 0.8 meters and climb a vertical obstacle of up to 0.4 meters. The maximum achieved speed was 16 km per hour. With 2 fuel tanks, each with 250 liters, it had a range of about 30 to 35 kilometers cross country and 60 to 70 kilometers on roads. In terms of protection, it had a frontal armor of 30 millimeters. At the side and rear, the armor plates had a thickness of 50 mm. The top plates were 6 mm thick. In comparison, the British Mark V had a maximum frontal armor of 16 mm. The armament consisted of a 75 mm Maxim Nordenfeld gun, which was mounted in the front, and 2 0850 machine guns for each side and the rear. A rather large amount of ammunition was carried within the vehicle. Initially 180 rounds for the gun, but this value was later increased to 300. The number of machine gun rounds was about 18,000. Take these numbers as a broad guideline, because there was a certain lack of standardization, which will be more apparent when we are looking at the crew layout. Also note that the seats are marked red here because the armor was stored in the seats. According to Uwe Böhm, the primary sources provide different values for the total number of crew members, ranging from 16 to 26 men. He provides the following base layout: 1 commander, 1 assistant, 1 driver, 1 mechanic who was trained as a reserve driver, another mechanic, 1 gun commander, 1 gunner, 1 loader, 12 machine gunners, 1 or 2 runners, 1 blinker or signaler, and 1 homing pigeon handler. The A7V has a very bad reputation. The question is this reputation justified at all? Now, it had many problems and was quite unreliable, but to make a reasonable evaluation, we need to take into account several factors. First, the A7V was the first tank and also the first fully tracked vehicle that Germany ever produced. Second, the development process was performed in 11 months. Third, at the start of the development there were no captured enemy tanks available. Fourth, the production environment in Germany at the end of the war was everything but suitable to manufacture a complex and new design due to the lack of qualified labor and resource shortages. Fifth, there was a total of 23 A7Vs, including prototypes. In comparison, both the French and the British built more than 1,000 tanks each. Calling the A7V a failure is as justified as calling the Tiger I a great tank. In both instances, only a few factors are considered. When it comes to the Tiger, a lot of people completely ignore the reliability issues. Yet it was designed and produced under better circumstances and far greater numbers than the A7V. The design flaws of the Tiger are hard to justify, because it was far from being the first German tank and many of the flaws weren't addressed successfully in its considerably longer operational history than that of the A7V. Thus my conclusion is that the A7V wasn't a bad tank design, as many people claim. Yet its suitability for the realities of the Western Front and how it performed on the battlefield will be part of another video, which will allow a more holistic assessment of its overall effectiveness as a military vehicle. Thank you for watching. Please like, comment, share and subscribe. And see you next time.